Good afternoon, everyone. I will now call the February 3rd, 2025 board meeting to order. Ms. Harrison, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Representing Educational District 1, Ms. Katie Howard.
Present.
Representing Educational District 2, Ms. Aretta Bowden.
Present.
Representing Educational District 3, Dr. Ken Zett.
Present.
Representing Educational District 4 and Board Vice Chair, Ms. Jennifer McDonald.
Present.
Representing Educational District 5 and Board Chair, Ms. Erica Mitchell.
Present.
Representing Educational District 6, Mr. Toten Pace.
Present.
Representing Educational District at Large, Seat 7, Mr. Alfred Chivy Brooks.
Present.
Representing Educational District at Large, Seat 8, Ms. Cynthia Briscoe Brown.
Present.
Representing Educational District at Large, Seat 9, Ms. Jessica Johnson.
Present.
Also present, we have Superintendent Dr. Brian Johnson and Madam General Counsel Nita Gupta. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. I will now entertain a motion to approve the January 7, 2025 meeting minutes and the January 29, 2025 board development training minutes.
So moved.
Second.
I have, it's been properly moved by Board Member Briscoe Brown, second by Board Member Brooks. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, motion carries. Is there a motion to approve February 3rd, 2025 board meeting agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Board Member Briscoe Brown,
Second.
second by Board Member Baldwin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion, any opposed? Motion carries. Dr. Johnson, could you please bring the work session items?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today we have three presentations. The first presentation is an academic update from Dr. Butler, which will give kind of an update on overarching strategy and some next steps. Our second presentation is by Dr. Lisa Bracken, which is the monthly financial update. And the third presentation is a Soft G presentation, Guardrail 4, Interim Goal 4.1, which is the district level college and career readiness performance index for high school readiness. Dr. Butler, we are ready for your presentation. And I'll say before to your board, I get kind of excited about teaching and learning. So, Dr. Butler, forgive me, and board, forgive me if I butt in anywhere, okay? But Dr. Butler's done a tremendous job, and glad she's here.
Right. Good afternoon. All right. Good afternoon, board and Superintendent Johnson. Thank you for the opportunity to present these updates and jump in anytime, Dr. Johnson. I too am really excited to provide these updates. Definitely is a personal passion and love. That's why we do what we do. My name is Dr. Shakitha Butler, the Chief of Teaching and Learning. So just to affirm, the Teaching and Learning Department, we are fully committed to one district, one goal, every child. And this is just a reminder of the different departments within the Teaching and Learning Division. The focus of today is to talk about our current state and strategies, as well as some of our next steps, and to let you know specifically what we're doing as a focus by grade band and grade level. So what's our current state and strategies? As you are aware, we have 10 schools on the TSI list, 6 traditional schools. What we found with digging into the data is some key factors that led to the identification of being on this particular list. One deals with content mastery for our students with disabilities, as well as low progress towards closing gaps for students with disabilities. And one school was identified for students with disabilities as well as our English language learners. So what are we doing about it? What's our approach? Well, the thing that we know that's constant are our state standards. So our milestones are designed based on the state standards, and so is our curriculum. So we know that that's an opportunity that we can dig into that's really clear. The two areas of opportunity that we can control is how we teach, the teaching strategies, and how well we use our assessments, both formative and summative. So with coming in and doing the curriculum audits, and really digging into our scope and sequence. Some area of opportunity is to ensure that there's alignment between our state standards and the blueprints that are provided by the state and Inspire. Other resources that we can take advantage of to ensure alignment could be the learning indicators, because the state provides a enormous amount of information around how they assess resources for teachers, resources for students. So really just taking advantage of what's already provided to us through JDOE, so that way our resources and information that we're providing to the schools levels is alignment and targeted to ensure that we are meeting and achieving the standards. Starting with our school-based coaches, we have quite a large number of school-based coaches that are providing support to our teachers with the standards. But what we've recognized with speaking with principals and school leaders is that our coaches also need support. So where there's a high level of accountability, we must partner that with a high level of support for all of our stakeholders. And so we are leaning into our instructional coaches and ensuring that they have the support that they need to do the heavy lift of supporting every individual's teacher's needs in the school. So we have partnered with TNTP. That training actually was just this past week, to provide that support to coaches around the coaching cycle, as well as content level support to shore up that there's an alignment to the standards and the state blueprints. Coaches also have the opportunity to receive one-on-one support from TNTP at their school building with anything that they have requested support on, such as leading a PLC or supporting a teacher through a coaching cycle. To support from the central office, some of the things that we've heard is that we want the support from the central office to be high quality support. To ensure that the support is high quality, one of the things we have to do is align on expectations. What should central office support look like? What are we doing in the buildings? So in November, we presented to principals our service delivery model so that it is clear to school leaders and all that we support exactly the areas that we support and some different activities that we can do around within those categories. That includes direct support to teachers, support with common planning, as well as delivering direct professional development at the school level customized to their needs. To make sure that we are able to provide that support as promised, we used our school-based data to create support tiers. Those support tiers are either monthly, bi-monthly, bi-weekly, and weekly support. This, again, was provided to schools in November, so they know exactly the frequency of support that they have at the opportunity to take advantage of based on the way that we've tiered the support. The other thing that we did just this past month was partner with our schools division to have school-based meetings with individual school leaders in the central office team so that we can ensure that that support is customized based on their requests. So all of that started this past month and will continue through the end of the semester. With the Exceptional Education Department, Teaching and Learning is also working with the Exceptional Education because exceptional education students are general education students first. So we want to make sure that they have the absolute best that we have to offer to all of the students in our district. So that's partnering with especially design instruction. That support is delivered by the inclusive practice specialist, but we also join our exceptional education partners on cross-functional district team walks, and their central staff leaders and specialists participate in the coaching training provided by TNTP. So we are learning together how this rollout looks, how support looks in schools, so that we ensure that we're all speaking the same message and that there is an intense level of support at the same level of quality. Sorry, I went back. Other areas of opportunity deals with assessment. So of course we talked about the standards, what our teaching strategies look like, and then how well are we performing, which are the assessments. So one of the things that we're working on is we established a assessment task force back in November. We have an internal team and an external team, all centered around these three purposes: to develop a collective assessment philosophy. Why are we assessing? What are we assessing for learning? Are we assessing of learning? Who are the major players that should be involved? From there, once we have identified our philosophy, what is our assessment plan, timeline, action steps, resources? What do we need? And then building it out so that we communicate it in its clarity for all. All of our stakeholders should know their part in this assessment philosophy and plan. And it's all grounded in a balanced assessment approach, which aligns to these 5 keys: clear purpose, clear targets, sound design, effective communication, and student involvement. And these are our current assessments, both state and district level assessments. As you can see, this is the reason why there's a need for the assessment task force, so that we can all be clear on what our targets are. So how does this focus look by grade band? In elementary schools, specifically leaning in on literacy. As you know, we have the House Bill 538, where we're focused on training teachers in the science of reading. Over 2,000 teachers today are on track to commit and fulfill that commitment by the June deadline. So they're on track there. In August, we established a literacy task force with our school-based partners to make sure that as we're rolling out the science of literacy and we're leaning into our literacy work, that we are getting real on-time feedback before, during, and after we take steps in the literacy space. And we're expanding our partnership with the Rollins Center with our literacy implementation work. With this work comes new resources. Our state standards for ELA is changing. We will have new standards in the fall. Part of that requirement includes science of reading integration for our K-5 students. So we're taking advantage of that opportunity to adopt for K-12. And this lists our timeline so that you can show how intentional we're being about the work. So starting in August with our literacy task force, as you can see, the literacy task force shows up several times so that you can see it's not we're speaking to them on the front end and then at the end we're checking along the way to make sure that as we roll out different phases of the work, that we're getting feedback directly from our school partners with how we're doing and where we need to go next. We'll be back next month with for board approval of the Tier 1 resource. This resource, based on focus groups and feedback that we received, will be one that's comprehensive. It includes the science of reading as well as support for all of our diverse learners in our buildings. With middle school, we are expanding our literacy intervention work. So while we will adopt K-12 curriculum, we want to make sure that we leverage our bright spots. So Sylvan Hills Middle School has shown growth in this space of ELA, and they've done this through aligning the work, making sure that they're using supplemental resources and focusing on co-teaching practices. Well, as Howard, the work has been similar: vertical articulation, so that way there's alignment throughout the school, as well as drilling in on student needs through small group instruction. In our high schools, and you'll hear more about this in the SOFG presentation, we are leaning into our post-secondary readiness. While we are seeing improvements in all areas, we really want to accelerate this area and expand access to our students. So that looks like expanding our advanced placement courses across the district, leveraging our ASVAB assessment for college and career readiness indicator, exploring how we might take advantage and expand our career pathways and other ways that we can increase dual enrollment. Lastly, our next steps. We will complete our literacy adoption by March and prepare to roll out implementation and training for staff. we will complete our science of reading training for all of our elementary teachers by the date that the state has set. Our instructional coaches will receive training through June. And we have hires. A key part of this work, we can't do it alone. And so we know having leaders, the right leaders at the helm, is a key part of the work. So really leaning into elementary, secondary, and the College of Career Pathway space to ensure that this work is aligned in focus, and begin expanding our work and finalize our assessment approach for this upcoming school year. With that concludes our presentation, and I turn it back over to Dr. Johnson for next steps and questions.
Does anyone have any questions? All right, we'll start with Board Member Dr. Zeff, followed by Katie Howard, and Board Member Brooks and Briscoe Brown.
Thank you for this, Dr. Butler. There's a lot in this presentation, and I really appreciate the thematically what I'm hearing is a lot of instructional supports, curriculum maps, science reading training, instructional coaches. Talk for a second about how you balance instructional autonomy versus sort of prescriptive teaching practices. I've heard as from principals and from teachers, teachers want to be respected as professionals. At the same time, they want to. How do these supports become tools to help folks do the job they need to do, not another thing to manage? How are you all thinking about that balance? And I imagine Dr. Johnson might want to chime in too.
Right, and so that's why we included the state standards as part of the presentation, is because that's the constant. That's the goalpost that we're looking to target. So while there's opportunities for autonomy, and of course, you don't want all of your classrooms to be cookie cutter. You want teachers to be the creatives that they are and introduce their personality to the lesson. But the state standards are the state standards. And so leaning into the standards, leaning into the blueprint so that we can ensure that the alignment is there and that our students have the opportunity to achieve and be assessed and be successful on the assessment. So it's really balancing that out, because we want our students to, if our students have an opportunity to see all of the standards, then they have a greater chance of showing mastery. So that's where we're looking to standardize where we're supporting.
Only thing I would add to that, she covered all the things, is we believe in defined autonomy. So, if the performance is there and students are moving forward, right, the more autonomy we want to create. We want teachers to be able to be innovative in the classroom, et cetera, but there's a baseline of expectation that we should expect pretty consistently throughout the district from the standpoint of how students are matriculating and how students are learning. And so to that end, we want to be intentional about that. I think the other thing is, and if I could just be very common sense about it, like I've been a high school principal, I've been a teacher, I've worked in principal supervisor roles, et cetera, et cetera. And so, you think about, I talk about high reliability organizing quite a bit, but there's a frame in there that speaks to sensitivity to operations. And so the approach that we try to take with and for and to schools is not from a place of we're prescribing from the top that have never done it. We want to build with and engage them deeply, also say we've been there. And so we know when it's not right pretty clearly, but we also know when it's right. And when you're right, we want to give you the room to sprint. And so there is a balance. I think the word you used was balance, and there is absolutely a balance. Cluster superintendents are deeply involved, and there's a back and forth, a push and pull in regards to what we're doing, try to provide.
Yes, thank you so much for this report, and can really see how y'all have been digging in and doing a lot of assessment work, which is greatly appreciated, and know so much is being done differently and already, and then looking at just the focus and obviously on literacy and then instructional coaches. We've had instructional coaches in place and just trying to understand a little more about what's being done differently to give them the support that's needed based on the areas of most need for our students.
Sure. So with what we've heard from principals, is that they wanted support for instructional coaches' personal support. This past year, our coaching academy was designed in such a way that it was more train the trainer based. So providing them with content that they then would redeliver to a campus. What it looks like in this semester is really, it's just personal. It's just about what do you need as a coach to support the teachers within your building, especially if they're a new coach, and many of our coaches are new. If there's a coach, and sometimes this is hard for people to admit, if there's a coach, for whatever reason, maybe they taught a particular grade level, but now they're supporting multiple grade levels. Or maybe in a secondary space, they taught a specific discipline within, say, science or within ELA, but now they're supporting multiple disciplines. So even with just being able to help with content knowledge and making sure that when you're supporting your teachers that you feel confident and comfortable, and that you have those resources, whether it's the content level resources or if it's strategies and tools to be able to go back into your building and lead that body of work.
Thank you, and thank you for all you're doing. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Yeah, the other thing, the other side. The other thing is we have, and I'm just very clear, I've said this to district folks, the system. We have a lot of talented human capital that's in the coaching space. We have to reduce the variability and the quality of instruction that's taking place across Atlanta Public Schools. And the reality is, and I've said this very transparently, if I've got 300 students in my building, let me give this contextual example. If I got 300 students in my building, and usually there's a handful of really struggling teachers that are going to be the difference. And it may be because they're new. It may just be like there's a myriad of reasons why they may be, challenged. It does me no good to have 4 or 5 coaches, right, that are coach. I probably am better suited to maybe leverage those coaches in a different capacity. So we're trying to lean in and have all of those conversations as well as a part of this. But the truth is, we've got a lot of coaching, human capital and talent that we need to support, but then that we also need to leverage to move student achievement forward. And there is I'll go back to balance, like there is a push and pull there, and I think all the points that Dr. Butler made were spot on.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with everything that you just said, Dr. Johnson. Speaking from a practitioner's perspective, a lot of our best teachers move on to become coaches or administrators for higher pay. And we lose a lot of our best talent in the classrooms, for them just trying to make a good living. And why I think, and I appreciate our posture here at APS of taking care of teachers, because I believe we're retaining more of our best because of how we're compensating teachers here in this district. And I've even heard many folks leaving central office and coming back into the classroom because it makes more financial sense to be in the classroom. And so I love our model, and I just wanted to talk that up because I think you're correct. When it comes to the to coaching and the teacher development, I guess I'm going to keep banging the table that I love that we focus on the content and strengthening our teachers there. I just want to really encourage us to be responsive to what we're hearing from the students, and that's developing the engagement in our classrooms. We can have all of the trainings and the certifications and professional development for our teachers, but we really have to coach our teachers up on how to make it exciting and engaging and relative for our kids. Otherwise, we're gonna keep missing. I heard that 2,000 of our teachers were on track to finish the Readers are Leaders training. I was curious as to how many total teachers should be completed and how many are not on track.
Yeah, I'm working with, we've changed our system, our reporting system in Frontline. So right now we're keeping it on a spreadsheet and we're uploading it into Frontline pretty soon so that way we can differentiate between how many completers and how many need to complete, because there are two ways to satisfy the requirement. So while we're tracking the Cox Campus and Georgia Learns completion, other teachers may have already satisfied it through being OG trained, letters trained. So working with HR to get that information so we can get that back.
Thank you. And I guess two small questions. The career pathways, do we have interest in dual pathways? And as far as that task force goes, that task force sounds amazing. I was just curious as to who's on the task force.
So for task force, I think you're talking
Which
literacy.
one? Yeah.
Right, okay. So for the college and career piece, the post-secondary piece, the answer would be absolutely. And we'll talk a little about this in Soft G. I think one of the things that we have to be really careful with is we need to offer robust AP offerings. I completely concur and agree, but we need to have robust dual enrollment offerings.
That's right.
We should be looking at certifications and credentials. We should be looking at, students that go into the military. I was at the Reading Bowl weekend before last, and a LET 3 and a LET 4, junior and senior JRTC. Let me not use a junior and senior JRTC cadet had come up to me, and I was asking them, "What are y'all gonna do?" And for both of those young ladies at Darrell High School, they were going into the military, whether it be active duty or in the reserves, and so they already had that plan. So I just say it to say we need to be thoughtful about the menu of options we provide. I think when you look in the Soft G report, you're going to see a slide in there that speaks to the dual enrollment piece and the opportunity that exists for us to really look at beefing up some of those things. I'll let Dr. Butler speak to the literacy piece, if you want to speak to that task force just a little bit.
Was that question about the literacy task force?
Yes, just who comprises the task force? Because I was asking some of the, our senior board members, like, is this how we've done, identification of curriculum in the past? And they were like, oh, I'm not sure. And I was like, I really love the thought of, real competition, going head up with vendors and seeing who's got the best product and having a collective of people to make a decision. But then I'm like, okay, well, who are the collective of people?
Yeah, so it's multi levels. So with the literacy task force, it's just think about it like more as advisory. So we have central office staff, principals. We also take that to teacher advisory and principal advisory, like our updates. But in terms of the decision makers, we have vendor presentations last week at our coaching academy. We'll have vendor presentations at our upcoming PL day in February 17th. We also have materials being delivered to schools so that teachers and families can go out and see the materials. And so there's an online form where everyone will be able to review the resources, whether in person or online, and let us know what they think.
And let me just speak transparently to that. One of the things we pushed this time. Go back to that timeline real quick. We pushed this timeline a little bit, and our goal is to get it in March. And actually give finance credit here for hopefully helping us get to this spot. But the whole goal in trying to get to a place of adoption in March, so that any material that we acquire, we can get in the hands of teachers and get support and training to the hands of teachers, ideally before they leave for summer. What you don't want is, and we fought this a little bit this year as I started, post-opening school, is materials that were actually being delivered like the week school was starting. And so it's difficult, and I get it, like you just have natural challenges that exist. It's very difficult to expect a teacher that's got students right in front of them to implement something. So we're trying to expedite this some so that we can get as many of the materials in the hands and to teachers as we possibly can, so that they feel as comfortable as possible with the resources as we return back for the start of the school year.
And I do want to point out the January 17th through 24th date, the vendor orientation meetings. That's where we met with each of the vendors that were interested in being our provider, to let them know what our asks were, what were our must-haves. And part of that is making sure that the resources are delivered on time. So explaining to them, you know, what our timelines are, that our goal is to start training in the spring before teachers leave. And they had to affirm that all of our demands could be met by that time before they could move forward to the next phase of presenting to our coaches and teachers.
Cynthia?
Actually, you asked a lot of the questions I was going to about the number of teachers who are on track. I would add to that a question, though, about how we can encourage the ones that are not on track to also complete this training, so that we can have as many teachers as possible. Well, whether it's the check or whatever it is that needs to be the motivator. I know it's extra work for them, but having everybody complete the same training and understand the same factors in the science of reading is just so important as we move forward together.
I will say the plan put in place was excellently designed to motivate in terms of course, the stipend, but you have coaches in the building.
Yeah.
So the coaches in the buildings are making sure that if there's any challenges with the content and materials, they're keeping track of that information and providing one-on-one support to teachers who may be having challenges. So we'll definitely look for other opportunities too, but I do think what we have is pretty good in terms of encouraging our teachers to meet a deadline.
Yeah,
And I had one more question, and that's about, I think it's your slide 10, about the tiered support to each school. I noticed, and I know it's tiny on the screen, I had to kind of get up here like this, but I noticed that our not all of our TSI identified schools, the traditional schools, obviously, are receiving the highest level of support in all areas. Is that because they fell down in one area but not others, or is there some reason that we are not providing a high level of support, the highest possible level of support to all those schools, so that we can lift them off that list?
So this document was created October, November before the list.
Okay.
And so we met with the state, I believe last week, to talk about what those additional supports will be coming to our schools as a result of that identification. But this list was generated back in October before.
Okay, so the tiered support list may not necessarily be up to date, and we are, just to confirm, we are ensuring that every one of the TSI schools is getting all of the support it needs so that we can get them lifted off that list.
Absolutely, and Chief Usher.
I see
One-
the nod back there in the
Yeah,
back.
100%. And one thing I will say, just to, she nailed it in that this was produced before the TSI list came out. But one of the things that we hope this does, as well as conversations with the state and getting our arms around the levels of support. So you think about the principal, or teacher, or instructional coaches sitting there in the building, and the district says they want to come these days, and then when you're on these lists, the State Department offers resources as well, and so then the state is coming on these days, and Metro Research is coming on these days, and so it becomes quite overwhelming. And sometimes, I'm not saying this ever happens in APS, but sometimes there are conflicting messages. And so that cluster superintendent goes out and is following up on something specific with the principal around a specific content area, grade level, et cetera. And all of a sudden, it's like, well, I had this person come in and tell me something completely different. And so what we're really trying to do is, build with schools versus for schools, so that they know. So I think that's an opportunity that we will continue to have going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks, Jessica. Thank you. Echo my colleagues, I am excited about the task force and the approach and the timeline around this process specifically. point of clarification, when you said we were realigning the curriculum, and I know we're required K through 5, but you said we're going to do K through 12 in terms of the curriculum pieces for literacy curriculum, K-12 through K-12?
Yes.
Okay, so that's great. I think I'm looking at slide 20, where of course, you know, my favorite space, college and career readiness, and just looking at the number of students that are entering our state systems without needing remediation, and or with scores that are going to gain them access and financial resources at the colleges and universities. And so just would love to hear more specifically about what that looks like in our upper grade levels to kind of help our students close those gaps, because they're getting in, but what we're finding is, of course, just data tells us that can maybe less than 30% are able to actually graduate. And so I just want to make sure that I would love to hear what the robust work is that's happening on that level so we can see some gains in that space as well.
That's exactly where we're headed, is really looking at where are the areas of opportunities to shore up not just access, but completion and certification. And so some of the things that will need to happen, I can, speak to what I've done in other spaces. It may look like support with reading strategies in terms of being able to access that accelerated content and to pass the certification exams and things like that. But that's where we're looking to go, and we're actually have a soft G presentation that can get a little bit more deeper into this space today.
Thank you.
Tolton?
Just thank you so much, Dr. Butler, for this amazing presentation, and again, echoing all the sentiments of my colleagues here. Just one additional question. Thank you for the differentiated and tiered support that I saw, of course, based on data that tells the story of what we need to do and where we need to go. Curious that in addition to kind of the data that we've seen and have analyzed, were there kind of any, testimonial or anecdotal, so evidence, so to speak, from leadership at schools that says, hey, we need support in this area, that might have echoed what we saw in the data? Just kind of a curiosity.
I apologize. I missed what slide were you referring to? Go ahead, Doc.
He's referring to the tiered support. So I think to answer that question, I'm going to just call on a cluster superintendent, whomever, because I think it's best come from the field, like a school leader. Any context around feedback from school leaders? Anybody want to jump up? Anybody or everybody? Or all of? Why don't y'all come together? No, I'm just messing. But I do think it gives good context, because you're in front and with schools every day. What are you hearing from principals anecdotally in regards to how decisions are being made? Maybe I'm putting you on spot, but maybe unpack. I know y'all have unpacked for me. I didn't mean all y'all really had to come. Y'all really can't. Be careful what I say. I know. I think it could be helpful for you all to talk a little bit, in particular those that, because most of you have been principals in this district. So I think it'd be helpful to talk about maybe those, the support meetings that you had, and just kind of any feedback.
So principals were very receptive to the support meetings that we had. Number one, everyone was at the table, right? And so they were able to present their data, and based on their specific data, they were provided tailored support for their areas of identified need. So they found that process extremely helpful and beneficial.
Additionally, I will say, as a former principal, recent principal, this was the first time in 20-something years that I've ever seen all different stakeholders come to the table. And it was flipped, because the principals led the conversation. They started with their winter map data and actually were able to drill down to specific subgroups. So you didn't just have content individuals there. You also had special education specialists. Also, we even had, for instance, attendance. behavior, MTSS. So it was like we wrapped our arms around the principals and we were able to identify specific needs, but not just talk about it, we actually captured it. We have a working document. In 6 weeks, we'll be following back up. So each person actually identified their action step, who owns it, and then 6 weeks, we actually go back to the school to make sure that it's actually happening.
And I would assume there's also some accountability. I'm not assuming, I know this. There's accountability for us because we've said we're delivering support X or support Y. And as a byproduct of us saying we're delivering it, there should be an expectation that's reciprocated.
Documented in a plan that we established there at the meeting, attached with the name and the individual that was going into the school to follow up. So it's documented very clearly. So accountability is there.
And also with the accountability, when the principals left, there was this big sense of awe. They didn't feel like they were being criticized for where their data is. It actually felt like support. So all of us own this data. This is how we're going to support you. So it was the flip of some other presentations that we have had in the district where they actually said for the first time in a while, they actually felt supported by all.
I think I would add, good afternoon, I would add that the principals had input into specifically what they wanted, the support that they needed for each school. So it is tailored and targeted support directed at each individual school based on the needs that they've identified that's going to help them move the target forward.
And I was just at a, good afternoon, I was just at a school today and they were meeting with their leadership team in preparation for the people coming tomorrow and then how they're going to maximize the people they have on the campus every day with the help that is coming actually weekly for this school.
Good afternoon. The only thing that I would add, we're not waiting until 6 weeks. We are double checking and anchoring down in 6 weeks. Is as we are in schools every single day, we're checking in, has this person reported with the support of our program director? So it's not a long wait or a gap of 6 weeks. We're actually checking in on a regular basis to make sure that the agreements that everyone that came to the table said that they were going to do to support our schools, that it's actually carried through and happening.
Curtis, you feel like you got to say something, don't y'all? All these wonderful ladies have spoke. Curtis, you got to.
Let the ladies go first. Also, a sense of urgency is the key word here. We want to talk about long-term planning, but this was the rubber meets the road. We kept mentioning how many days left. I lost track. We're 50-something, low 50s now. So this was 48. So this was literally and they did a tremendous job, all the principals, but if they started talking real broad and long range, we kind of refocused that this is to help us move where we are right now so we can get results. We want results in long term, but we wanted some immediate help, and that's what our target was.
Shelley Goodrum, I support the Washington cluster and the non-traditional schools.
Tabitha Lawrence, I support the South Atlanta cluster.
Lisa Hill, Carver cluster and Thera cluster.
Audrey Sophianis Jackson in Midtown.
Forrestella Taylor, the Frederick Douglass cluster and single gender schools.
Curtis Douglass, Mays, and North Atlanta cluster.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you all so much. You are an incredibly impressive group. I think that wraps up our questions from the dais. Dr. Johnson?
Thank you very much, Dr. Butler. Dr. Bracken, we are now ready for our monthly financial update.
All right. Good afternoon, board members, Dr. Johnson. Today, I'll be presenting 4 topics related to finance. First, I'll provide you with consolidated general fund financials for FY25 for all activities occurring in the months of July through December. I'll provide the quarterly student activity funds report, discuss the need for budget adjustments, and finally provide an overview of where we currently are in the FY26 budget development process. With the next 4 slides, we'll cover the FY25 Consolidated General Fund financials for the first half of the fiscal year. So far, we've collected 77.73% of the total resources budgeted, with local collections at 87.5%, state at 37.36%, and other, which includes the Title I transfer in at 43.24%. We're currently tracking ahead of pace for revenue collections as compared to this time last year at 76.76% compared to 75.44%. Local is lagging slightly, and recall that our projections this year were quite aggressive. We'll continue to monitor the pace of collections. On slide 5, we see the budget to actual expenditures so far for FY25. We've currently spent 45.67% of budgeted allotments, and spending in all functions is appropriate for this point in the fiscal year. Slide 6 represents the current spending trend for FY25 against the FY24 trend. The overall spend is ahead of last year's spend by less than 1%. For context, last year at this time, we were ahead of the previous year by 6%, but ended the year under budget. Detailed financials can be found in Agenda Item 9.2. Slide 7 shows the expenditure activity for federal programs since the beginning of the year. As a reminder, title funds have a 15-month period of availability, so July 1st through September 30th. And when comparing the year-to-date actuals, FY25% spend is higher than FY24 with the exception of Title IV, but that spend is appropriate for this time of year. On slide 9, you'll find the summary for the FY25 second quarter student activity funds report. Total annual revenue is $2.96 million and leads spend so far, which is $2.24 million. This is appropriate for this point in the fiscal year, and this detailed financial report can be found in Agenda Item 9.4. This slide shows the current percentage of use of fund balance budgeted and the percentage to total expenditures, which is currently at 14.39%. As a reminder, our long-term goal is to be at 15% of fund balance with a no lower than amount of 12%. We have 2 budget adjustments this month, both for the same thing. First, we will recognize an increase of $5.3 million for Title I carryover in special revenue, and then we are requesting to consolidate $2.3 million of that into the Consolidated General Fund. Details of these adjustments can be found in Agenda Item 6.1, and Agenda Item 9.3 includes the detailed information report for special revenue adjustments less than $1 million that have occurred in January. The next several slides will provide an overview of the FY26 budget planning process so far. At our January Budget Commission meeting, we spent some time discussing revenue trends and forecast with a specific focus on the district's participation in 9 tax allocation districts, or TADs, across the city. The current year impact is a loss of almost $97 million, or the equivalent of 2.4 mills. The total cumulative increment reinvested in TADs so far is about $765 million, with another $1.6 billion forecasted. The total APS increment lost will be around $2.36 billion. The promise of TADs is the boon in the district when they close. However, in the past, each TAD neared completion, a request was made to extend those. In 2019, an IGA, or intergovernmental agreement, set terms for definitive end dates for APS's increment in those TADs. Another intended benefit of TADs is the halo effect. However, in the past, underassessed values for property and abatements have impacted our ability to feel that halo effect and destabilize the financing mechanisms that prolonged the time it takes to pay down these TADs. This presentation is for informational purposes only. We're not considering any adjustments to our participation in existing TADs. The next few slides will review the school budget allotments that were distributed on January 15th. Principals received their budgets on January 15th, and we conducted a full-day training and support session with principals. Special thanks to all the teams here that showed up to support that annual process. Departments received their first budget training on January 8th, and budgets were opened on the 9th. Ongoing training and support is occurring, and budgets will be locked on February 28th, when we will consolidate budgets and compare to revenue for the first time. There are a variety of factors that impact a school's budget. For instance, enrollment is up across the district around 500 students. but that enrollment varies from school to school, with some seeing increases or decreases of up to 20%. Average in salary and benefits are up across the board, and school-by-school demographic and programming changes may have occurred. We also reassessed and established a new baseline of funding. This caused us to take a hard look at the SSF weights to support the increased baseline, which means more funding coming through the base per pupil and grade level weights. The one cut to the school budgets this year is the phasing out of the 1.0 ESSER step-down flex position for every school. We are also addressing an issue where students in AVA and Phoenix programs were being double funded. This year, this amount will be held back within the school's per pupil allocation. And finally, we're piloting a zero-based budgeting, or ZBB, process for signature and turnaround programming. ZBB is a budgeting process that allocates funding based on a program's efficiency and necessity rather than budget history. As opposed to traditional funding, no item is automatically included in the next budget, and as such, the initial allocations for schools was $0 for these programs, and we're currently reviewing those requests. Throughout the school budget development process, we've sought feedback on what positions and programming should be flexible and at the discretion of principals and GO teams, and this slide summarizes what has been communicated with schools. And the current formula distributes about 60%, or $370 million of the total school allocations through our weighted per pupil SSF formula. The programs listed in blue here are funded through SSF. An additional $246 million worth of positions and non-personnel allocations are funded outside of and on top of SSF. These programs are listed on the slide in orange. The overall school allotment has increased $90 million compared to this time last year. This is due primarily to the push out of large increases in salary and benefits, SROs at the elementary school, the readers or leaders positions, the state safety grant, and increases in special education teachers. This slide shows how the SSF funds are allocated by weighted category and stability supplements, and how the distribution has changed from last year to this year. And our next Budget Commission meeting is scheduled for February 27th. And at that, we will provide a deep dive into the department budget process and include the compensation recommendations for FY26. That concludes my presentation. I can take any questions you have.
Thank you, Dr. Bracken. Questions? Shivi, go ahead. You're up. You're up first.
Thought we were gonna let the smart guy go first. No, I appreciate the presentation. Thank you so much, Dr. Bracken. I did have a question around the ISS para. I understand that as of now, it's considered a flexible position, and I have received some feedback in the community, wishing that it be more of a tight position that all schools have to have. And I do understand that there are some perceived different needs from one school to another, but I just wanted to know, and I'm not even sure if Dr. Bracken, you're the person to ask the question to exactly, but if that's something that we would consider moving into the tight category.
I will say for the first time, our new baseline funding formula does ensure that every middle school and high school is allocated a 1.0 ISS para. So, and we have not been able to at least demonstrate that in the past. So every school is funded for one. And then the school choice is still available to principals and GO teams.
Right. And I guess my question is more around the autonomy, I think.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't want to get into picking every single role, because I think I think we get into a very challenging spot if we do that. But I think cluster superintendents in conversation with schools as they're thinking through their budgets are definitely supporting schools and how they're thinking about some of the roles and different things. So. I'd caution us not to get to the place where we're prescribing every single role that a school leader, except for an SRO, Mr. Zeff, Dr. Zeff. I'm just messing with him. I'm not gonna let that go. did. But I think we got to be careful. But
It's good to have these conversations transparently, though. Like, I appreciate you naming that. And I'm only bringing it up to elevate it, right? Because it was something that was brought up in the community. And so I appreciate saying, hey, there are some things that autonomy is good on, and there are some things that we're not looking for that on. So.
And I will say, under that flexible column, I'll point to the narrative here. The principals can use discretion, but it still must meet a standards of service. And anywhere that they're deviating off of that recommendation, there's a justification field there where they need to say how they'll support students if that program or position isn't being funded. And cluster superintendents will review that with principals and make sure that makes sense to support that student population.
And then my other request is around the TADS. I'm not sure if there is a curated list of all of the TADS that we have right now, but I would love to, just get my hands on it. I was looking for it, but if we could look at that. And then two, I was just curious, like, what are our options? Like, you kind of, I heard some breadcrumbs there, but I'm like, what can we do about them if we had a change of posture about them?
Sure. Our Budget Commission materials from January, we exhaustively went through each of the TADs, what's in of those, how long we've been a part of them, how much we've invested, when they will end. And also we discussed that IGA agreement that we entered into in 2019, but didn't go into effect until 2022. So we're only in a couple of years of having that IGA implemented. But that IGA allowed us to renegotiate our position on a lot of the existing TADs up to and including that end date, which secures when our APS increment gets removed, even if the TAD outlives a certain end date. And so that IGA is really powerful, and we're operating under that right now. And at this point in time, there's been no additional conversation about adjusting our position on TADs.
Thank you.
We'll go in order. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bracton, and I appreciate the flexibility for if folks are, just picking up on Board Member Brooks' comment, if folks want an ISS Pro, and I think that makes sense, that's the GO team should be in conversation with the cluster superintendent and the principal. And, GO team elections are open now. It's declaration period. So if you're watching online, open up that window, get democracy is a beautiful thing. Let me hard pivot to lagging local revenue. Looks like 51 million we're short. At what point are you concerned? We only got 100 days left of the year. At what point does this become a budget adjustment?
Yeah, so not concerned. One of the things that's not in context here is we received a $30 million payment from our TAD IGA in January, which would not be reflected here. So that 30 million is in that local gap that you see here. But we'll continue to monitor it. There's nothing, because of the way we get our revenue in, it usually comes in big chunks, so you can see big percentage swings year over year. But we'll continue to monitor, and if you see an adjustment, it will be on the expenditure side where we're taking action to try to slow down spend. But just as I mentioned last year, we're actually on a really good, while we are tracking ahead of pace for expenditures by about 1%, this time last year, we were tracking 6% ahead, and we're able to course correct in second semester to make sure we hit budget. So the reason we monitor every month is that we have different triggers we can pull in the management of our budgets to make sure that we're staying in alignment. And the last thing that we want to do is come back to the board and have to make an amendment.
That's what I wanted to hear was
we'll use our tools.
You all figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
We will live within the envelope that you have. Last question around the TADs. We talked a lot about this and I appreciate Board Member Brooks raising it. We talked a lot about this at the Budget Commission last month. Tying this to a conversation we're going to have at 6 o'clock and one we had at 10 a.m. and we're going to have next week about the reduction or the opting out of the property tax cap, the floating exemption, tying that to this conversation. And I saw Erica Long walk into the room, or maybe, there she is. So this $2.36 billion number that you equate to, what, 4.5 mils was the last time?
It's 2.4 mils this year.
2.4 mils. So when we talk about, so a disproportionate weight is being put on our residential property tax base because our commercial base is been dramatically underappraised. We listed that as one of our legislative priorities. Whatever we can do to be helpful, because we know people are struggling, and so I'm not asking Ms. Long for an update now, but please come to us and however we can be helpful, because this burden has been disproportionately placed on our homeowners, and we need to step up and help them out wherever we can.
I will say that through this process, we are having really great conversation with community who are bringing really great ideas to us. And so we had a speaker this morning who had a litany of potential responses that we could take. I've asked him to email me that so we can sit with our legislators and talk through what is possible and what's not possible from that list. I'm having coffee, I think, one day this week with somebody that had some ideas. So this generating the conversation brings a lot of people to the table with great ideas that helps us think through this. Some of the conversations we were having is, we're so downstream from the assessment process, but by the time we're setting a millage, we're a year in arrears from when decisions were made that could impact what that digest actually looks like. So many of this conversation, it's about how we pool our resources with other governments that are impacted by this underassessment of commercial values, and how do we think about going upstream to make sure that the digest is correct to begin with, and then come off of more targeted tax reliefs for populations up to and including renters and not just homeowners in our district.
And just really quickly, just to confirm, no new extensions are coming down the pipe, and no new TADs are coming down the pipe.
Not that I'm aware of.
Perfect.
Thank you. Katie?
Yes, thank you. I echo Dr. Zeff's sentiments and everyone on this board around. And I do think there's a silver lining almost to 581, which is really forcing the conversation around targeted property tax relief. And yeah, I took copious notes during the public hearing, looking forward to hearing from people tonight and on the 10th, and looking forward to convening some opportunities with our state legislators and us around how we can work together and with the city. And to touch briefly on Budget Commission, I just sent Board Member Brooks a follow-up. Really good discussion and conversation there around the TADs. And then also talking about how we continue to talk with the city about how we do provide some relief for people who have really faced the brunt of sharp increases as a result of TADs in their property values. My question, though, real quickly, slide 16, new things that we are doing, which I'm fully supportive of. I believe the first initial presentation of the budget to Go Teams was on the 31st.
Mm-hmm.
How is that going? How are we supporting Go Teams and understanding some of these changes?
Yeah, so I know my team was out at a lot of these Go Team meetings, as requested. The Go Team office does a really great job of finding what the issue is that Go Team most wants to delve into, and then reaching out to the various departments to push in and support. So where Go Teams had a lot of questions that were more complicated about the funding of the formulas, they asked my team to sit in and explain it, and we were happy to do that. So as these meetings are going forward, we'll continue to support the conversation. What we're doing more from our side is supporting the cluster superintendents and the principals any questions that they might have, so that they can lead their Go Team meetings and explain and advocate for their decisions that they're making.
Thank you.
If I could just speak to just something connected to that, I think one of the realities of this budget cycle is that, and I think it's a tremendous thing, but there was an 11% pay increase that was funded last budget cycle. And so as principals open up their, start to really look at what it takes to fund an 11% recurring item, that's a real challenge. So, just about all of our schools got more money, but the net is less because I'm now funding every position at 11%. So let me contextualize that a little bit in not as complex as Lisa Bracken math, but Brian math. So if I have 75, and I'm just going to use teachers, so I have 75 teachers that are making $75,000 a year, it's $560,000 more that I'm on the hook for after fund. It could be that I got another $250,000, but I really have a net loss of about $300,000. So these are real challenges that we have as a byproduct of decisions that I think are really great decisions, but that are here. And so schools are grappling with it. The district is we're all grappling with this budgetary moment.
Right. Tolton.
Thank you, Dr. Bracken. If you could, I tried to write down some of those suggestions that the gentleman gave this morning, but if you could email that when you get it, that'd be amazing.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank
We can
you.
include that in the.
Absolutely. And then speaking just to slide 16 that's there, could you share a little more just contextually about the double funding piece with Atlanta Virtual and Phoenix?
Yeah, so the AVA program and the Phoenix program are just that, programs, not schools. They don't have a school code. So we don't report students for those programs to the state, and we don't receive money from the state for those programs. We receive it at the traditional school where those students are coded. However, we are fully funding an AVA and Phoenix program with teachers, with administrative staff, support staff, but the per pupil is still sitting on that traditional school's budget. So if I am a student that is fully in the AVA program, I might never step foot into the school of my traditional school, but that school is receiving my full per pupil amount. And so we've been double funding it for a while. In the past, we've been able to, and now we can't. So we're making some recommendations around holding back that per pupil allocation from the traditional schools. So the traditional schools see the number of students from their projected enrollment that are going to those programs and the per pupil amount for that. And so they're able to plan without those dollars. And then we will actually level them during our annual leveling process at our 15th day count. So where those students actually end up, we will either release the dollars back to the school if they're in the traditional school, or we'll sweep it and fully fund the AVA and Phoenix programs with those dollars.
That concludes Dr. Johnson. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bracken.
Thank you, Dr. Bracken.
It is now time for us to engage in board goal monitoring for interim goal 4.1. Interim goal 4.1 allows us to monitor our students' progress towards meeting college and career readiness as defined by the Georgia Department of Education's College and Career Readiness Performance Index, also known as CCRPI. The aforementioned interim goal helps us to monitor our overall progress towards goal 4, college and career readiness. I would like to take some time to review the norms and expectations for the monitoring session as Dr. Johnson takes us through the monitoring report. He will discuss the district's progress towards meeting interim goal 4.1, the district level college and career readiness performance index for high school readiness. Will increase from 59.7 in school year 2023 to 62.7 in school year 2025. Board member comments, questions will be focused on creating and engaging dialogue with the superintendent. What are the factors that lead to current levels of achievement? Did the district make progress towards the goal? Why or why not? What strategies and resources worked well or did not work well? What changes and adjustments need to be made? Will the district require additional resources to meet this goal? What support do you need from the board to be successful? Please hold your questions until Dr. Johnson has had a chance to walk through the entire report. Board members' comments and questions should not be evaluative, be technical in nature, tell the superintendent what to do, suggest administrative actions, or reference data that is not in this report. If we stray from our norms and expectations, I will remind us of those norms and expectations and ask that you rephrase your question or comment to align appropriately. Dr. Johnson, please walk us through the report.
Thank you. All right, so interim goal 4.1 is interim goal 4, college and career readiness performance index for high school readiness will increase as measured by Godot and CCRPI. Looking at the interim goal 4.1, which is district level college and career readiness performance index for high school readiness will increase from 59.7 in school year 23 to 62.7 in school year 25. Just want to point out that all the data that we go through is lagging data, and so as presented, it's not in the actual current year. So what is readiness? The 5 indicators that this state looks at for high school indicators for readiness is at or above grade level, which looks at the Lexile level in the area of American literature. Student attendance, which is the percent of students in grades 9 through 12 that are absent 10 or less days. Accelerated enrollment, which is any combination of dual enrollment, advanced placement, and international baccalaureate, as well as Cambridge, and it's the percent of 12th grade students that are earning that credit. Pathway completion, which would be a combination of 12th graders, the percent of 12th graders that are in an advanced academic CTAE, fine arts, or world language pathway, and those students must complete 3 mandatory state-funded courses in that pathway or indicator. And then college or career readiness, which is the percent of 12th grade students entering the technical college or the university system without needing remediation or achieving a readiness score on the ACT, SAT, 2 or more AP exams or 2 or more IB exams, or passing a pathway-aligned end-of-pathway assessment resulting in a national or state credential, or completing a work-based learning program or military readiness. So some key takeaways when we look at this data in this SOFG report, if we can go to the next slide, is that the district improved from 59.7 to 64.0 in the school year 24, which in fact exceeded the target. The district began to close the gap with the state. So as you look at the state improved by approximately 1.9%. The district improved by approximately 4.3%. There was also a 3% decrease in the number of students that missed 10 or more days, and so that we know is a positive as well. The number of 12th grade students that are participating in APIB dual enrollment increased by 5.14%. Also, pathway completion increased for APS graduates by 4.69%. And then overall college and career readiness increased by 9.19%. The thing I will note is that there was a 0.58 percentage point decrease in regards to at and or above grade level reading, which again is American literature, looking at the Lexile levels. If you go to the next slide, what you'll see there is the target and the actual. And so again, this is a positive move that we see and actually exceeding the target there. And I think as we go through, we'll see some opportunity that we think we have in regards to next steps. The next slide is basically a dashboard, a picture of kind of where we are. So as noted, you can see that the percentage at or above grade level decreased by 0.58 for grade level reading. In student attendance, you see the increase there to 55.72% of students, about a 3% increase. Accelerated enrollment, which is APIB, dual enrollment, or Cambridge, we see an increase of about 5.14. And again, that's 12th graders that have participated. In regards to pathway completion, we also see that increase. And then college and career readiness, which is, again, I think an area where we'll have some opportunity. We also see a pretty significant increase of 9.19% and an overall increase to 64%, which is a 4.3% increase this school year, this past school year. This is a snapshot, and I know Dr. Freeman is probably in there somewhere, but this is a snapshot of offerings really across the district. And even as I'm looking at this, we probably should have given a comparative view. We'll try to do that in an upcoming board update, just to look at the year before and current, just to kind of see where we are. But we do see pretty decent advanced placement participation. I think the thing that we want to point to in particular here is the opportunity that probably exists in regards to dual enrollment. But something else I would encourage us to look at as we look at measuring this particular component that's not reflected on here, which are things like certifications and credentials, as well as the percentage or number of students that we have that matriculate to and through an ASVAB or military decision. All those things are things that we probably should be looking at when we think about, and obviously the state gives credence to when they look at college and career readiness. Our last slide, just kind of a next step in administrative strategies, and then we hope to open up the dialogue. What we know and identify is that in the area of reading, there's a ton of opportunity to lean into the secondary space, and I know Dr. Butler talked about this earlier. We talked about Cox Campus and the focus on science of reading, but also the acquisition of resource and support for 9-12. There is a little more in working with TNTP, what they've done for us, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Dr. Butler, but what they've done for us is given us a curated list of the best resources that they've identified in other districts across the country. What we have for the state in K through 8 are very specific, narrow lists that we must choose from, and we think that's a good thing. So the adoption of high quality instructional material, obviously as a resource for our teachers, will be helpful. We also know that we have to do some continued work in regards to our students with disabilities, as mentioned earlier. It's a real area of opportunity for our district as well as language learners, as we think about meeting the needs of our students. And then state blueprints will continue to be, and again, you see a lot of overlap in these conversations, but it's just because we'll continue to narrow the work and the focus. In regards to attendance, as mentioned, the whole child teams are responsible for monitoring the attendance. There's a lot of work that will continue to go on. I know that schools are even more and increasingly deeply engaged in the attendance conversation. We do see an increase, but we need to have even more of our students here in regards to the 10 or less days that you see. And then lastly, an accelerated enrollment pathway completion in college and career readiness. We've heard, and we know that many of our schools are marching towards the expansion of AP access, whether that be in a myriad of ways, and we'll I'm sure as questions come, we'll let Dr. Freeman speak to kind of some of what's going on there. But then also there's a ton of opportunity in regards to dual enrollment as well as IB, but I really want to lean into dual enrollment and really thinking about how we leverage as much dual access for our students in conjunction with the AP and IB experiences that we know our students are getting. So this is where we are, again, a positive in regards to where the district is trending, and a little bit of a peek into where we think there's opportunities to improve in this really important area. As much as graduation rate is a thing that we know people look to, I believe this is more important because this speaks to, again, indicators of actual readiness. And so as we start to look at where we're headed, I hope that we can continue to lean in and continue to build out an even maybe more robust way of looking at readiness that aligns even more intentionally with what the state has identified. So with that, I'll yield Vice Chair McDonald and turn to any questions.
Questions? Katie, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Just jumping right in, excuse me. Expansion for dual enrollment and looking at slide 7, I mean, we're obviously seeing opportunity. And then I also think about, even though I know it's kind of separate in terms of, I guess, the way the state's measuring this, although it has included ACCA certification, CTAE, completion of pathway. What are some examples of ways we're leaning in to expand, and also want to touch on indicators of readiness? I can sense you have some ideas that would probably come in the future, but
Sure.
just how we really know how students are really prepared when they leave us.
Yeah.
For whatever pathway they choose.
Absolutely. Where's Dr. Freeman? I'm sure come on up, Dr. Freeman. So I'll let Dr. Freeman, because she's been kind of spearheading this work and thinking with and through schools. So if you want to talk a little bit about what actually is going on at schools and the work you're kind of leading, and then we can talk about Future Forward.
Sorry, good afternoon. For dual enrollment, we've been really focused on understanding the different opportunities that exist under the dual enrollment umbrella. The difference between our traditional enrollment, our early college options, our accelerated career programs, and identifying which ones are best suited for our students. The dual enrollment task force has been I left my phone with the list of the different offices and different groups that are contributing to this task force to really identify what the strategies are, where the barriers are, and which ways that we can improve our communications to schools and support their identification of the correct students for each opportunity. We are meeting twice a month at this point, and just trying to kind of firm up what those recommendations are that we can present to our schools team and identify what those strategies will be for next school year.
Yeah, and I would only add that in this particular area, dual enrollment certification credentials, I think there's a ton of opportunity for us to continue to expand partnerships with business and industry, and not from the standpoint of hey, business and industry, this is what we want to do, but really flipping it and saying, hey, business and industry, what do you need? And frankly, what do you see 5, 10 years from now? And how can we best position our students to gain the skills, knowledge, acumen to be successful? And so we have a lot of energy around those types of conversations and experiences and doing that kind of work, and look forward to leaning in.
Thank you. And sitting on the ACCA board, hear a lot of that feedback from Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, which has a rep on the board. So excited to build off of the work they've been doing. And I know you love going over there. And it is awesome. And then just with the task force, it's great to hear about that and how we'll get that information as a board as we look to reset and narrow our goals, and how that will help inform us better in that work. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Katie. Jessica?
Sorry. Thank you. So looking at this slide still, and happy to hear about the ways we're thinking about dual enrollment, but just curious about our advanced placement spaces for those schools that are at or below, say, 10 or 11%. What are we seeing there? Anecdotally, I've heard that there's not the teacher credentialing in the pieces. What is the story that shapes up the gap for those schools that are kind of in that range? And I guess to Katie mentioning ACCA, what are we thinking about an expanded role that ACCA can play in helping us to close some of those gaps?
Thank you. So for advanced placement, we had a very concentrated effort on meeting with principals to understand exactly what their challenges were with the students. We identified 4 AP, what we call AP Access courses. These are courses that we've identified, even with support of the College Board. They are traditionally, students are successful in these courses. They are targeted to our lower grades so that they can use those as springboards to other opportunities like dual enrollment and international baccalaureate programs, or even more advanced placement courses. So those 4 courses were African American Studies, or AP African American Studies specifically. In meeting with every principal, we will now offer that course at every single high school next school year. Our second course was AP Computer Science Principles, and forgive me, I'm just we have all but 2 schools that will offer that course next year. We provided them with a list of students that met specific criteria and showed the potential to be successful in those courses, not only using AP potential, right, from PSAT, but other factors as well. And so being very specific about the students that met the criteria, they were able to see a way forward with enrolling the students and kind of presenting the opportunity to them during this course selection process. The third course that we identified is AP Pre-Calculus. We have there's 2 that are still pending, but we have an additional 3 schools that will be offering that course next year. That's up from the only 3 that were offering it before. And then our final course is AP Seminar. There's a lot of talk about, of course, American Lit shifting down to 10th grade, and AP Seminar is a 10th grade course. So we're still working on strategy from professional learning and working with the instructional coaches and just the teachers on this professional learning plan. That would be ongoing. Also, Ms. Johnson, to ongoing support throughout the school year for the cohort of teachers that are signed up for these courses in particular. So that would be in addition to the APSI, Summer Institute, that will provide the baseline of instruction. As far as leveraging ACCA for advanced placement, I've not been privy to that one as a possibility. I'm open to what that looks like. I just don't have any details on that at this time. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for this presentation, Dr. Johnson. I actually want to build on something Board Member Johnson talked about, which is the expansion of AP. I really like slide 8 because it talks about that there's things that need to no, not this one. It's my slide 8. No, that one. Because it's not just about expanding AP access. If we haven't invested in reading readiness, attendance, and preparing kids, just providing a bunch more course offerings isn't really going to solve the problem. Matter of fact, it may actually undermine our problem. Talk to me if you had like for some of these schools that are really, as Jessica said, at 10, 11%, what is help me understand, is it about, what percent of it is access, what percent of it is readiness, and how are you all thinking about trying to lift those kids up?
We definitely believe two things are true, right? We do have an access issue where there are students available in schools that are currently ready and able to take the courses but did not have the opportunity due to offering. But then there's also the idea that there's a readiness component as well. The students' comfortability with advancing, doing more than the minimum. There's a culture of preparing early on and not waiting until 11th grade that we're trying to shift. I've heard at least 2 principals have said that, and it's just trying to develop this culture of taking advanced coursework and being challenged early on and not receiving it as penalty, right? And so we're working both angles, simultaneously. We know that there are students currently available, and we want them to not wait for our data in reading to shift for them to then have the opportunity.
And the only thing I would add is we have an obligation, in my opinion, to be as intentional as we possibly can around readiness. And so to the extent that, and I have a lot of energy around this secondary readiness conversation because I don't think it's a one size fits all type of model that we need to be attacking. I would say even going back to AP, so when you think about what a high school principal, any principal's dealing with, they're trying to navigate a budget, frankly, and people and talent and all the things that exist, and expertise, and you got to have certifications. And once you get into secondary, you're dealing with like complexity of certifications because you everybody can't teach welding the same way everybody can't teach AP Chem, and so you got this really puzzle that you're trying to put together as you're building your master schedule. I think as much as it is moving a school that may be single-digit percentage into a double-digit threshold, the other side of the equation is like, what is your solve? So what is your strategy for making sure that your students are actually prepared? Because it may be that, hey, look, we're going to really expand dual enrollment, and I'm really doubling down on work-based learning, and I'm really wanting to make sure that I, have some really engaging opportunities for so I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all, but the thing that I do know is that this is a conversation that I think is as important to Atlanta Public Schools' future and as consequential as on the back end as reading is on the front end. Like this is as consequential on the back end, because what we cannot do is tout tremendous graduation rates and not have tremendous preparedness. Like it's oxymoronic to say we're graduating 90% of our students, but 45% are actually prepared. Prepared does not mean you're going to a 4-year institution. prepared means you're going to a 2-year, you're going to a 4-year, you're going to the military, you have a meaningful certification potential that can get you a job. And that is that's the work at the secondary level, and those are the conversations that we hope and are pushing to take place as we lean into this space.
Board Member Pace, and then Board Member Brooks to follow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One question and kind of more a comment. Question, well, I'll see the comment first and then kind of end with a question. As we think through kind of next steps, and you're talking about the dual enrollment task force or working group, if you will, would love for us, and I'm sure we're doing some of this already, but Madam Shelley Goodrum and I happen to sit on the WorkSource Atlanta board together. And so I know, of course, just not only serving on the board, but having worked in the agency as well, that there are a lot of dollars available that oftentimes go unspent for our in-school youth. And so I'd love for us to think kind of innovatively about how we can access partnerships in that way to take full advantage and leverage those dollars for the benefit of our students in the district. So that was just the first comment, and happy to help with that as well at any turn. And then the question related to shifting the culture, thinking back to just personal experience as a project grad scholarship coordinator at the South Atlanta Educational Complex, as it was called back then, and thinking of what it took to shift a culture into a college-going or post-secondary culture. What kind of things are we doing? And I'm still working on my downloads, Dr. Johnson, but as a new board member, what kind of things are we doing with our counselor kind of in-service or training or development, as well as for our graduation coaches around helping to shift that culture?
We've identified just that as the work. Right, to the ways that we can engage with our counselors and understanding the role and the influence that the graduation coaches have on potential work like this. Hearing this from the schools as one of their biggest barriers to progress on these goals, we're definitely leaning in on those two groups purposefully.
Yeah, and I'll be even just like cut across the field. We've got some organizational shifts that need to take place. If I'm just being really frank, we're quite fragmented. So master schedule lives in one area. And let me be clear, I think our master schedule folks do more on the technical ends. What we call our master schedule does more on the technical ends, more so than actually helping the principal think through how to put the puzzle together. And so we need to bring that together along with graduation coaches, along with schools, to really drive some velocity around some of this. Here's the truth: if you don't, I think to the point, if you don't sit as a principal, if you don't build this into your schedule, if you don't bake it into your schedule, it's tough to bolt it on. And so we need to be even more nimble in position to be able to support schools with this. And so we will be proposing, recommending, implementing some organizational things that will allow us to move with a level of laser focus around preparing our students post-graduation to go out into Atlanta or wherever and thrive. And that's our charge. We get great energy around that. That's what we're supposed to do.
Thank you so much. One of the things I would encourage us to take a look at is that not every child gets a certification, not every child goes in the military, and not every child goes to college. There's a whole bunch of other kids that we kind of see as the kids that fall in the gap. One of the things that I've seen innovative happening, actually down in Clayton County, is they're starting a Student Department of Employment Services, and it's specifically catered for those kids who we're talking about, who don't go to college, don't get a certification, don't go to the military, and making sure that we, do what you talked about, Dr. Johnson, making sure that the employment needs of our corporate neighbors in Atlanta are being met by those students as well. And so creating those partnerships so that we can leverage job opportunities, I think, and as well as for students who go to college and then are looking for a job, trying to enter the workforce, with the new college education that they have. I would encourage us to think about looking at that. I think that's the space that a lot of school systems are going to start moving towards, and I think it would be a good service for our community to have here in Atlanta. A year ago, by a former administration, we were promised access to hybrid AP classes, and we saw it as an equity issue. We talked about how there's a huge disparity between access to AP classes across our district. I was wondering if that is something that we're still including in the conversation. And especially as we look at the expansion of AP access and kind of what can we most immediately do.
You want to speak to whether schools are thinking hybrid or thinking in person? I got the impression most of them are thinking more in person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's resounding just disinterest in the logistics to be able to pull together the hybrid courses for a significant amount of students. And so we did offer that as an opportunity. We explored it with one or two schools that were thinking they would have some staffing issues and wanted to see what the logistics could be. And so we're still able to expand the courses, but their preference with the students' support and preparedness and overall acceptance of being successful in a hybrid setting was not the overall desire.
So I think to put a final point, like they're looking towards the expansion, but maybe not as much the virtual option of expansion. More, I think there's more schools, it sounds like, that are really thinking about how to offer it, which frankly is a better experience when you start to think about the rigor of an AP course.
Well, I'd like to say thank you for this report. It's one thing I do want to touch on just briefly is how are we preparing our students for 21st century jobs, 21st century skills? I know we talked a lot about, and I came in on the tail end, but kind of know where we're going. And I only say 21st century because things are continually changing. The industries are changing. And it's not just getting ready for Atlanta and the nation, it's global now. And so what type of innovative ways are we making sure we close the gap on looking at those 21st century skills, learning, and also global opportunities?
We were just discussing this with the AI conversation and the ways that we can integrate it and, just the perceived burden, right, of trying to keep up with the ever-changing technology at a pace that we can continue to fund, prepare teachers, encourage students to stay on the front end. So in full transparency, our strategy right now is, to Dr. Johnson's point earlier, about adding it on, not necessarily in the master schedule, but trying to incorporate different opportunities within the community, different programs like our Google partnership, and just different resources that come to us from our partners, from the colleges and universities, the summer camps, the after-school programs, a push into our programs that really is rooted in our strategy right now. And I speak specifically for my world and CTAE for our IT pathways, constantly monitoring what antiquated content looks like. And by the time they cycle through a pathway that lasts for 3 years, is it still something, right? But what does it mean to shift that course every single year to keep up with the changes? So we definitely grapple with it and don't really have the perfect solution, but we do see a lot of students benefiting from just the interest and the intrigue about what is new and how they can kind of leverage what they've currently learned for, future opportunities.
I think, Joe, the only thing I would add is I think it's why it's so important for us as K-12 educators to stay close to business and industry leaders so that we understand where things are moving. I think about IT and I think about 10, 15, 20 years from now, it'll be quantum, right? It'll be like we won't be talking about AI and the way we're talking about it. It'll be a completely different approach. So it's going to be important for us to stay close, I believe, to business and industry, to understand where things are headed, so that we can do all we can to position our students to be successful.
Thank you, and this concludes our work session items for today. Madam General Counsel, if there's a reason for the board to retreat into executive session.
Yes, Madam Chair, the board needs to discuss student, personnel, and legal matters.
Okay, is there a motion to enter into executive session to discuss student discipline, personnel, legal, and/or real estate matters?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Board Member Briscoe Brown, second by Board Member Pace. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.